Welcome dear students. Till now we completed 3 chapters from the Mathematics 1. Today's our topic is chapter number 4, Ratio and Proportion. Dear student, in previous standard you learn about this ratio and proportion. We have to learn some advanced knowledge about the ratio and proportion today. First of all, we have to understand what is ratio and proportion. See dear student, if we have to compare the two things, that is, suppose A is one student and B is another student, and A got 20 marks in an exam. At that time, B got 40 marks in that paper. Now, if we have to compare the marks of these two students, here 20 marks and 40 marks, we can say that B got 20 marks more than that of A. In another way, we can compare A got 20 marks less than that of B. This is the comparison, less or more marks, in the form of less or more marks. Same way we can say that suppose A got 10 marks, then B get 20 marks. If we have to compare the marks of both the students, here we can compare in less or more type. That is, A got 10 marks less than that of B and B got 10 marks more than that of A. Suppose A got 15 marks, then B got 45 marks. Now here, dear student, we can compare. See here, in comparison, A got 30 marks less than that of B and B get 30 marks more than that of the A. Like this is a one type of a comparison. But if we see the another way of comparison, we can say that, see, if we observe the marks of student A and the marks of student B, and if we take the division of this, that is 20 upon 40, we get, if we simplify this, we will get the answer is 1 upon 2. That means when A get 1 marks, at the same time the B get 2 marks. That means in this comparison we can say that 10 and 20, here also we get the division 1 upon 2. Now in this case we can say that A got 1 marks, at that time B will get 2 marks. That means marks of B are double than that of A. See dear student, marks of B are double than that of A. Or we can say that A got half marks than that of B. Got it? This type of a comparison is in a multiples. And when we are comparing the two concepts, when we are comparing the two quantities in terms of the division or in terms of multiples, then it is called as a ratio. Dear student, if we compare these marks, it is 15 upon 45. Then we got here, it is 15 ones and 15 threes. That means B got 3 times more marks than that of A. Got it? And A got 1 upon 3 times the marks of B. Got it? Therefore, dear students, this type of a comparison, here we compare more or less mark. But in this case, we compare the marks of both the students in form of multiples. That means A got 3 times more marks than that of B, and here B got double the marks of A, that is 2 times. Got it? And here A got half the marks of B. This type of a comparison is known as a ratio. In short, we can say that, dear student, if we have to find out the comparison between two things, we have to do the simple division of the two quantities, and after doing the division, we get a simple form, and that simple form is known as a ratio. Dear student, all of you know about in a science, we learn about suppose H2O. But this molecule of the water is formed because of the hydrogen and oxygen. If they are in a proportionate, then and only then the molecule of water is formed. That means the amount of hydrogen and amount of oxygen must be in a proportion. If they are in quantity, if required quantity, then and only then it will be happen. Now all of you know that. See, dear student, if these ratios, in short, remember, if we are considering about the ratio, you have to remember the word division. That means ratio means the division. We have to make the simple form of that, and we can say that the ratio of this. Now see here, the 20 and 40, this is the ratio. We can say that 20 is to 40, and we simplify this, we will get here 1 is to 2. The ratio is 1 is to 2, or we can say that 1 upon 2. In this case, the ratio is 1 upon 3, or we can say that it is 1 upon 3, or we can say that 1 is to 3. Dear student, some property about the ratio we have to learn. Before that, I think everyone understood this. What is the ratio? Ratio means we have to compare the two quantities, two numbers in multiples. If in short, we can say that if we get the division of 2, it may be for the three quantities. It may be for two numbers, three numbers. If three numbers are there, we can say that 1 is to 3 is to 2, like this ratio will be there. But therefore, dear students, the ratio means division, that you have to remember. Now, I told you that if we have to write the ratio, we can use this symbol. We say that 20 is to 40, or 1 is to 2, or we can write 1 upon 2, it is 1 upon 3, or we can say that 1 is to 3. Got Now, dear students, suppose we are considering some properties about this ratio. A and B, these are the two quantities, two numbers, and if we have to find out the ratio of this, we can write A is to B, or we can write A upon B. This is ratio form, A is to B or A upon B. Dear student, in this case, this A is known as a first term or predecessor, and this B is called as a second term. Now see, dear student, A is called as the first term and B is called as the second term. Now here one more thing I want to tell you that, dear student, just now I told you that it is the comparison in a multiple form. Now when we have to compare the two quantities, at that time that two quantities must have in a same units. That means if we have to compare 2 kilogram and 200 gram, this comparison is not happen. For this comparison, these two quantities must be in the same units. That means this 2 kg we have to convert it into the grams, or these grams we have to convert it into the kilograms. That means this 2 kilograms means 2000 grams, and here it is 2 grams. Now this we have to compare. If we have to compare this, now we can compare these two quantities. That means if we have to find out the ratio, or if we have to compare, that two quantities must be in the same units. Now if 2 kg and 2 grams, if we have to find out the ratio, for this one unit is a kilogram and second unit is a gram, they are not in the same units. For that purpose, first of all, we have to convert them into the same units. Therefore, we convert this 2 kilogram into 2000 gram, and here 2 gram we leave as it is. Now we have to find out the ratio. That means we have to find out the division. That is 2000 upon this 200. Dear student, these two get cancelled. It is 10 upon 1. That is 10 upon 1. Or we say that 10:1 is the ratio. Now dear student, here I write the unit for this quantity, and for this quantity there is a unit. But when we are taking out the ratio, at that time the ratio did not carry any units. Got it? Because it is in a multiple form. Therefore, while writing the ratio of any two quantities, any three quantities, need not write unit of that. Got it? Remember this point, because ratio is in a form of a multiples. Therefore, need not write to it is not necessary to write the unit for that particular ratio. Got it? Remember this, when we have to find out the ratio of any two quantities, after getting the ratio we did not have to write unit for that. And one more thing, that this is A and this is B, these are the two quantities. This is the ratio of A:B, or it is A upon B. This is the first quantity, this first property. A is called as the first term and B is called as a second term. Second thing is that if we have to find out the ratio, then or taking out the ratio, that two quantities must be in a same unit, and after getting a ratio there is no need to write unit for the ratio. Then another thing I want to tell you, that the ratio remains unchanged. But the ratio remains unchanged if we multiply or divide them by with constant number. That means suppose the ratio is 1/2, and if I multiply this ratio by a constant number 2, then it is 2 1s are 2 and 2 2s are 4, and if we simplify this we will get the answer 1/2. That is the original ratio. Therefore it will remain unchanged if we multiply or divide by a constant number to the both quantities, then it is remain as it is, it does not get changed. Now this is the second property. Now we have to learn the third property. That is, suppose one ratio is given 2:100. Second, it is given 5:100. It is 27:100. And suppose I write here 90:100. If we observe, or we can say that it is 120 we can write it as 12:100. Now dear student, when we are comparing, if we observe all these ratio, one common thing you observe in all these ratio, that the second quantity is 100. When in a ratio the second quantity is 100, at that time that ratio is known as a percentage ratio. Dear student, remember this, when in any ratio the second quantity is 100, then that ratio is known as a percentage ratio. See here, we can write 2:100, that means 2/100, that means 2 out of 100. That is percentage ratio. Out of 100 means percentage ratio. Here 12/100, out of 100 it is 12. Therefore, if in a ratio the second quantity is 100, then that ratio is known as a percentage ratio. Dear student, all of you know now that if we compare the two quantities in a multiples, then it is known as a ratio. In ratio, the first number the written as A:B or A upon B. A is called as the first term, B is called as the second term. Second thing is that if in a ratio the second quantity is 100, then it is called as a percentage ratio. Third property is that if we multiply or divide to a particular ratio by a constant number, then that ratio is remain unchanged, the original ratio remain as it is. If we multiply by 3, multiply by 2 to the both the quantities, then we get 2:4, and if we simplify we will get the original ratio 1:2. Therefore dear student, till now we learn some what is ratio and properties about the ratio. Dear student, in previous standard you learn about this ratio and proportion. Now we have to learn another concept about this that you have already learned. See dear student, suppose number of pens and the cost of pens. These are the two quantities. If I take number of pens, 4 pens, at that time the cost is 20 rupees. Then suppose I take 2 pen, at that time the cost of 2 pen is rupees 10. Got it? Suppose I take 8 pens, then it is 40. Dear student, see, if I take 1 pen, then I will get here the cost is 5 rupees. If I take 3 pens, the cost will be a 15 rupees. That means these two things are there, and these two things are depend upon each other. Suppose we can take another example. I have a book of 100 pages. 100 pages, one book is there, and I want to read that. If number of pages read and days to complete the book. Suppose I read 1 page per day, then how many days I will take to complete that book? The book have 100 pages. I read 1 page every day. Then how many days will required? It required 100 days. Instead of 1 page, I read 2 pages. Then how many days I will require? I required 50 days. Suppose I read 4 pages. Then how many days I required? I require 25 days to read all that book of 100 pages. Now here also, these are the two concepts. One is number of pages that I read every day and the days required to complete that book. Here also both are depending upon each other. In this case also they are depending upon each other. Now what is the difference? If we observe this, you come to know that if I increase the number of pens, the cost of pens also get increases, or the amount of pens that also increases. If I take 1 pen, I have to give 5 rupees. If I take 2, then I have to pay 10 rupees. That the number of pens are increases, the cost of pens is also increases. That means one quantity is increasing, depending that another quantity is also increases. Here number of pens are increasing, the cost or the amount of pens is also increases. If the number of pens are decreases, the cost of pens are also decreases. That means these two quantities are depend upon each other, but one is increasing, the another is also increasing. One is decreasing and another is also decreasing. But here, if we observe, I read 1 page every day, then the number of days required to complete it will be 100. If I increase the number of pages 2, then days are decreases. Number of 4, then days are 25. If I read 50 pages per day, then it required 2 days to complete that book. If I read 100 pages, then I required 1 day. That means in this case, if this quantity are increasing, this quantity is decreasing. Like this. Therefore, dear student, here these two quantities are depending upon each other, and here see dear student, number of pens and the cost of pens are also depending upon each other. But dear student, what is the difference between these two? Now observe this. If I do the division of this, that is 4 upon 20, it is 1 upon 5. Then 2 upon 10, it is 1 upon 5. Here it is 8 upon 40, then it is 1 upon 5. If 1, then it is 1 upon 5. 3 upon 15, it is 1 upon 5. Therefore, dear student, here the ratio of that two quantities is remain constant every time. When the ratio of two quantities is remain constant every time, then it is called as a direct proportion. It is called as a direct proportion. And here, if we do the division, then it is 1 upon 100, 1 upon 100. Second, here it is 2 upon 50, that is 1 upon 25. This ratio is not remain constant. But one thing is remain constant, that is, if we multiply this, 1 into 100, it is 100. 2 into 50, it is 100. It is 4 into 25, it is 100. It is 50 into 2, it is 100. And 100 into 1, it is 100. That means if we do the multiplication of these two quantities and that multiplication remain constant every time, then that is called as the inverse proportion. Therefore, dear student, you have already learned in previous standard, that is in standard number 7, standard 8, you have already learned about this. This is the revision type. See here, when the ratio of two quantities remain constant or the division of two quantities remain constant, then we say that this is a direct variation or the direct proportion. And here the multiplication is remain same, is remain constant, then we say that it is the inverse proportion. In our daily life we see or we observe many examples of this direct variation and inverse variation or the direct proportion and inverse proportion. Therefore, dear student, here we completed the basic concepts about the ratio and proportion. Ratio is the division of the two numbers, or it is the multiple comparison in form of multiples, first quantity and second quantity. Then we can find out the ratio in a simplest form. Then if the second property or the second quantity is 100, then it is called as a percentage ratio. Now we completed about the direct variation, and it is called as the inverse variation or the direct proportion, and it is the inverse proportion.